User warm. Empathetic 2-meter-old Emma sat quietly in her favorite corner of Sunshine Children's home. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Emma had ranged her small collection of colored pencils in a perfect line, ordered from shortest to longest. The red one was slightly worn from use, but it still had its place in the careful pattern she had created. Round her, the other children filled the large playroom with laughter and chatter. Tommy was building a tower with blocks, while Sarah and Ben played a loud game of tag. The sounds bounced off the walls and made Emma's ears feel uncomfortable, so she focused on her pencils instead. Organizing things helped her mind feel peaceful. When the world became too much, Miss Kate stood near the doorway, her kind face showing the sadness she tried to hide. She had just finished talking with the Henderson family, who had come to meet Emma that morning, like so many families before them. They had smiled politely but shaken their heads when Miss Kate explained Emma's needs. They said Emma seemed like a sweet child, but they were looking for someone who would fit better into their busy household. Emma had watched from across the room as the family left. She could read the disappointment in Miss Kate's shoulders, even though the social worker always tried to stay cheerful around the children. Emma was smart enough to understand what those conversations meant, even when adults tried to use quiet voices. This was the fourth family this year who had decided Emma was not right for them. Each time, Emma heard the same words whispered in. Always, they said she was too quiet, too different. They worried about her need for routines and the way loud sounds made her cover her ears. They did not understand why she liked to arrange things in special patterns or why she sometimes needed time alone to feel calm. Emma picked up Mr. Buttons, her faithful stuffed rabbit with the soft brown fur. His left ear was slightly flatter than his right from years of gentle hugs, and one of his button eyes was a little loose. But to Emma, he was perfect just as he was. Maybe I am not meant to have a family, Emma whispered to Mr. Buttons, her voice so soft that only he could hear. She had lived at Sunshine Home since she was 3 years old. In those 5 years, she had watched many children pack their belongings and leave with their new families. She had waved goodbye from her window and felt happy for them, but also wondered when her turn would come. The other children at the home were kind to Emma. They included her in games when she wanted to join, and they never made fun of her when she needed quiet time. But Emma often felt like she was watching life happen from behind glass. She could see the happiness and connection around her, but somehow she could never quite reach it herself. Every night before bed, Emma dreamed about what her forever family might be like. She imagined parents who would understand why she needed her books ranged in a certain way on her shelf. She pictured a mother who would not mind that Emma preferred quiet activities to noisy games. She dreamed of a father who would listen patiently when she shared the interesting facts she learned from her favorite books. Most of all, Emma dreamed of parents who would love her exactly as she was, without trying to change the things that made her different. As the sun began to set, painting the playroom walls with soft orange light, Emma carefully returned each colored pencil to its proper place in her small wooden box. She had found the box in the craft room 2 years ago, and Miss Kate had let her keep it. Emma liked the way the pencils fit perfectly inside, each one having its own special spot. The dinner bell rang, and the other children began to clean up their toys. Emma hugged Mr. Buttons close to her chest and walked slowly toward the dining room. She would sit in her usual seat at the end of the long table, where the noise was not quite so overwhelming. After dinner, there would be quiet time in the common room, then baths, and finally bedtime stories. Emma liked the predictable routine of evenings at Sunshine Home. It helped her feel safe and secure, even when her heart felt heavy from another day of disappointment. Tonight, as she did every night, Emma would lie in her narrow bed and look up at the ceiling. She would hold Mr. Buttons and whisper her hopes to the darkness. She would tell him about her dream of having a bedroom with built-in shelves for her books and a desk by the window, where she could draw her pictures. But mostly, she would dream about having someone who would see past her quiet ways and recognize the loving heart that beat inside her chest. Someone who would understand that being different did not mean being less worthy of love. As Emma drifted off to sleep, clutching Mr. Buttons in her arms. She held onto a tiny spark of hope that tomorrow might be different. Maybe tomorrow would be the day when the right family would walk through those doors and see her for who she truly was. Use a warm, empathetic tone. James Wilson gripped the steering wheel of his old blue pickup truck as he drove through the iron gates of Sunshine Children's Home. The morning air was crisp and cool, and the trees that lined the driveway were just beginning to show their autumn colors. At 45 years old, James had never imagined he would be visiting a place like this, but here he was, with 3 handcrafted wooden bookshelves carefully secured in the back of his truck. He was not here to meet children or think about adoption. That dream had been buried alongside his beloved wife Lucy 2 years ago, when cancer had taken her away from him. Today was simply about keeping a promise he had made to her memory. Lucy had always loved books and reading, and she would have wanted these shelves to go somewhere they could bring joy to others. James parked near the main building and sat quietly for a moment, gathering his courage. The children's home looked warm and welcoming, with bright yellow walls and colorful flowers planted along the walkway. But stepping inside would mean facing the reality of children who needed families. And that thought made his chest feel tight with old grief. He was a skilled carpenter who had learned his trade from his father. For the past 2 years, since Lucy's death, James had thrown himself into his work. Creating beautiful things with his hands was the only activity that could quiet the loneliness that seemed to follow him everywhere. The smooth feel of wood grain under his fingers and the satisfying sound of his tools helped him forget, at least for a while, how empty his house felt without Lucy's laughter. Miss Cake met him at the front door with a warm smile. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She helped James carry the bookshelves into the main playroom, where children of various ages were scattered around playing with toys and reading books. As James sat down the first bookshelf near the large windows, he noticed a small girl sitting alone in the corner. She appeared to be about 8 years old. With light brown hair that fell straight to her shoulders, she was completely focused on the task in front of her, carefully arranging a collection of books by color and then by height. Within each color group, something about the girl's gentle, precise movements caught James's attention. The way she handled each book with such care reminded him of Lucy working in her garden. Lucy had possessed that same focused concentration, that same attention to detail when she arranged her flowers or tended to her vegetables. Watching the little girl brought back a flood of bittersweet memories. Miss Cake noticed James watching and spoke quietly beside him. "That is Emma," she explained with fondness in her voice. "She loves organizing things. It helps her feel safe and calm in a world that can sometimes feel too overwhelming." James continued to observe Emma as he positioned the second bookshelf. She worked with a patience that seemed unusual for someone so young. Each book was placed with careful consideration, and James could see that there was a logic to her system that went beyond simple color coordination. Suddenly, a loud electronic toy went off nearby, making a series of sharp beeping sounds. Emmy immediately dropped the book she was holding and covered her ears with her hands. Her whole body tensed up, and James could see distress written across her small face. Without stopping to think about it, James walked over to the noisy toy and gently turned down its volume control. The harsh sounds became much softer, and the playroom returned to its previous peaceful atmosphere. "Better?" James asked Emma in a quiet voice, crouching down so he was closer to her level. Emma slowly lowered her hands from her ears and looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes. She did not speak, but she gave him a small nod that somehow seemed to say more than words could express. James felt something unexpected stir in his chest, a warmth that he had not experienced since Lucy had been alive. As James returned to his work setting up the third bookshelf, he found his eyes drawn back to Emma again and again. She had resumed her book organizing, but now she was using his newly installed shelves. She treated each book like a precious treasure, carefully considering where it belonged before placing it in its new home. When James finished his work, he found himself reluctant to leave. He approached Miss Kate, who was supervising a group of children working on an art project at a nearby table. "The little girl, Emma," James said, keeping his voice low so the children would not overhear. "Could you tell me about her?" Miss Kate's expression grew sad, and she glanced over at Emma with obvious affection. "She has been with us for 5 years now," she explained softly. "Emma is on the autism spectrum, and many families find that challenging. But she is incredibly intelligent and has such a gentle heart. She just needs patience and understanding, qualities that seem to be in short supply these days." James nodded thoughtfully, his gaze returning to Emma one more time before he gathered his tools and headed for the door. During the drive home, James found himself unable to stop thinking about the quiet dignity he had witnessed in that little girl. The way she had carefully arranged those books on his shelves, treating each one with respect and finding the perfect place for it to belong. For the first time in 2 years, James felt a small spark of purpose beginning to grow in his heart. Use a warm, empathetic tone the following Tuesday morning. James found himself driving back towards Sunshine Children's home with a toolbox in his truck and a wooden puzzle he had stayed up late crafting. He had told Miss Kate he would like to volunteer with maintenance work around the building, but deep down he knew the real reason he was returning. He could not stop thinking about Emma and her careful, gentle way of organizing those books. Miss Kate welcomed him warmly and showed him to a storage room where several shelves needed repair. As James worked with his tools, sanding down rough edges and tightening loose screws, he kept glancing toward the playroom where he could see Emma sitting in her usual corner. She was working on a drawing this time, her small hand moving across the paper with careful precision. When James finished fixing the shelves, he walked over to where Emma sat. She looked up at him with those same wide, thoughtful eyes he remembered from his first visit. Without saying anything, James placed the wooden puzzle he had made beside her on the floor. It was a simple design with geometric shapes that could be arranged in different patterns. Emma examined the puzzle pieces carefully, running her fingers along the smooth wood surfaces. James had sanded each piece until it felt like silk and had chosen different types of wood so each piece had its own unique grain pattern. Emma began fitting the pieces together, and James could see her mind working as she discovered the various ways they could connect. "It is beautiful," Emma whispered, her voice so quiet James had to lean closer to hear her. "Though it feels nice." Miss Kate, who had been watching from across the room, looked surprised. She walked over to James later and spoke in amazed tones. "Emma rarely speaks to adults," she explained. "You seem to have a special way with her." The next week, James returned with a set of small organizing boxes he had crafted. Each box was a different size and could fit inside the others like a puzzle. Emma's face lit up when she saw them, and she immediately began experimenting with different ways to arrange them. James sat nearby, working on fixing a wobbly table leg. But really, He was watching Emma explore her new treasures. "I like the way you make things," Emma said to him that afternoon as they sat together in the children's home garden. The autumn air was cool, and colourful leaves drifted down from the oak trees round them. Everything fits together perfectly, just like it should. James felt his heart grow warmer at her words. "I like the way you see things, Emma," he replied gently. "You notice details that most people miss completely." Week after week, James continued his visits. He always brought something small that he had made in his workshop, smooth waystones that Emma could hold when she felt anxious, wooden blocks in different shapes and sizes, or simple toys that could be taken apart and put back together in new ways. Each gift was crafted with careful attention to the things he noticed Emma enjoyed most. Emma began to look forward to James's visits with an excitement that Miss Kate had never seen before. She would save her best drawings to show him, carefully, protecting them in a special folder she kept under her bed. The drawings were filled with intricate patterns and geometric designs that showed how Emma's mind saw beauty in order and structure. During their conversations, James discovered that Emma possessed remarkable gifts. She could remember every detail from every book she had ever read, reciting entire passages word for word. She could solve mathematics problems that challenged children much older than herself, working through complex calculations in her head. Her artistic abilities were extraordinary, creating detailed drawings that showed patterns and connections that others might never notice. But more than her intellectual gifts, James was drawn to Emma's kind heart and gentle spirit. She noticed when other children at the home were sad and would quietly share her colored pencils or offer to help them organize their belongings. She never raised her voice or complained, even when the world round her became overwhelming. As the months passed, Emma began to open up about her deepest hopes and fears. One quiet afternoon, as they sat together watching birds build a nest in the garden tree, she shared her most precious dream. "I wish I had a family who would not try to change me," Emma whispered, her words barely audible above the gentle breeze. "Someone who likes quiet time and does not mind that I do things differently than other people." James felt a deep ache in his chest as he listened to her words. This wonderful, intelligent, loving child deserved so much more than the rejection she had experienced. Yet family after family continued to pass her by because they could not see past her differences to recognize the treasure she truly was. The bond between James and Emma continued to grow stronger with each passing week. James began staying overnight occasionally as a volunteer supervisor, helping with bedtime routines and morning activities. One evening, as he helped Emma arrange her colored pencils before bed, she looked up at him with trusting eyes. "James," she said softly, "do you think I will ever find a forever family?" Looking down at this brave little girl who had already endured so much rejection and disappointment, James felt something profound shift inside his heart. He knelt down beside her bed and spoke with complete sincerity. "Yes, Emma, I believe with all my heart that you will find your forever family." That night, James lay awake thinking about Lucy and all the dreams they had shared about having children and creating a family together. Use a warm, empathetic tone. James sat in the small office at Sunshine Children's Home, staring down at the stack of papers spread across Miss Kate's wooden desk. His hands shook slightly as he picked up the pen, and he could feel his heart beating fast inside his chest. The adoption application forms seemed to contain hundreds of questions, each one asking him to explain why he wanted to become a father to Emma. "I want to adopt Emma," James said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked up at Miss Kate, who was watching him with kind but worried eyes. "I know I am single, and I know I am still dealing with losing Lucy. But I love that little girl more than I ever thought possible." Miss Kate leaned forward in her chair and smiled warmly at James. She had seen many people come and go from the children's home over the years, but she had never seen anyone connect with Emma the way James had. Still, her expression showed concern as she spoke. "James, I honestly think you would be wonderful for Emma," she said carefully. "But I have to warn you that the adoption process is very complicated. You will need to complete many hours of training about autism and how to care for children with special needs. There will be home inspections, background checks, and interviews with social workers. You will have to prove that you can provide for Emma's unique needs." James nodded seriously, understanding the challenges that lay ahead, but his mind was already made up. Emma had become the most important thing in his world, and he was willing to do whatever it took to give her the loving family she deserved. While James was filling out paperwork in Miss Kate's office, Emma was playing quietly in the main room when she overheard the staff members talking near the doorway. Their voices were low, but Emma's sharp hearing picked up words that made her stomach feel sick with fear. "We might need to consider moving Emma to the group home across town," one of the workers said. "Individual adoptions just are not working out for her. Maybe she would do better in a specialized setting with other children who have similar needs." Emma felt the world suddenly become too bright and too loud around her. The familiar panic began rising in her chest, and she quickly gathered up Mr. Buttons and retreated to her corner. She pressed her face against her stuffed rabbit's soft fur and tried to make herself as small as possible. Another rejection was coming. Just like all the others, she stopped speaking entirely, even to James during his visits. The next few months became a time of intense preparation and worry for both James and Emma. James threw himself into learning everything he could about autism and how to create a supportive environment for Emma. He attended training classes 3 evenings a week, where he learned about sensory processing, communication strategies, and how to help Emma when she felt overwhelmed. James spent his weekends reading every book about autism he could find at the library. He learned about the importance of routine, the need for quiet spaces, and how to recognize when Emma might be feeling stressed or anxious. Most importantly, he learned that Emma's differences were not problems to be fixed, but simply part of who she was. At the same time, James began transforming his small house into a perfect home for Emma. He converted his spare bedroom into a peaceful sanctuary, painting the walls a soft blue color that Emma had once mentioned liking. He built custom shelves along one wall where Emma could organize her books by color, just the way she preferred. He installed gentle lighting that could be dimmed when needed and created several quiet corners, with soft cushions where Emma could retreat when the world felt too overwhelming. The day of the home inspection finally arrived, and Emma was allowed to visit James's house for the first time. She walked through each room very slowly, her eyes growing wider with each discovery she made. The bedroom that would be hers had everything she had ever dreamed of: built-in shelves for her books, a small desk positioned by the window where she could draw her pictures, and storage boxes for her colored pencils and art supplies. Everything in the house was clean, organized, and peaceful. James had even created a special place on the kitchen counter where Emma could arrange her morning routine items in the exact order she preferred. "Do you like it?" James asked nervously, watching Emma explore what could become her new home. Instead of answering with words, Emma did something that surprised everyone in the room. She ran directly to James and wrapped her arms round him in a tight hug. The very first time she had ever initiated physical contact with any adult. Her voice was muffled against his shirt as she whispered, "It feels like home." But the real test came during the final visit from Mrs. Johnson, the social worker assigned to Emma's case. The overwhelming emotions of potentially having a real family combined with her deep fear of another rejection, became too much for Emma to handle. She suddenly curled up in a ball on the living room floor, rocking back and forth as tears streamed down her face. James did not panic or try to force Emma to stop. Instead, he calmly dimmed the room's lighting, spoke in a quiet, soothing voice, and simply sat nearby on the floor. He let Emma know that he was there for her without trying to force any contact or interaction. Slowly, after nearly 20 minutes, Emma began to calm down. Mrs. Johnson watched the entire situation with amazement. "Mr. Wilson," she said quietly, "I have seen many experienced parents struggle with situations exactly like this. Your response shows remarkable understanding. Use a warm, empathetic tone." 6 months later, Emma Wilson stood in front of the tall mirror in her very own bedroom, carefully brushing her light brown hair until it lay smooth and neat against her shoulders. The morning sunlight streamed through her window, casting gentle patterns across the wooden floor that James had polished to a soft shine. Emma smiled at her reflection, still feeling a warm glow every time she heard her new name. She was no longer just Emma from Sunshine Children's Home. She was Emma Wilson, daughter of James Wilson. And she had a real family at last. The name Wilson felt like a precious gift that she carried with her everywhere. When teachers called her name during attendance at school, when the mailman delivered letters addressed to the Wilson family, or when she wrote her name at the top of her homework papers, Emma felt a deep sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. Their daily routine had become like a beautiful dance where both Emma and James knew exactly what steps to take each morning. James would wake Emma gently by sitting beside her bed and speaking in a soft voice, giving her time to organize her thoughts before the busy day began. He never rushed her or made her feel pressured to hurry. They would eat breakfast together at the small kitchen table James had built himself, with Emma sitting in the chair that faced the window so she could watch the birds in their backyard oak tree. While they ate their toast and drank their juice, Emma would share interesting facts from the books she had read the night before. James listened carefully to every word, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine amazement at his daughter's brilliant mind. "Did you know that honeybees can see ultraviolet light that humans cannot see?" Emma might say, and James would lean forward with interest, encouraging her to tell him more about what she had learned. Starting school at Riverside Elementary had been challenging at first. Some of the other children did not understand why Emma needed extra time to process instructions from the teacher, or why sudden loud noises in the cafeteria made her cover her ears and look for a quiet place to sit. A few children whispered about her behind their hands, wondering why she was different from them. But James worked closely with Emma's teachers to create a special support plan that would help her. He explained Emma's needs with patience and kindness, helping the school understand that she was not being difficult or stubborn, but simply processing the world in her own unique way. Slowly, as weeks turned into months, Emma began to feel more comfortable in her new environment. The turning point came during the school's annual art exhibition in the spring. Emma had been working on a special project for months, staying after school in the art room with her teacher, Mrs. Peterson. She had created a series of 5 paintings that showed how she saw the world through mathematical patterns and geometric beauty. In Emma's paintings, colors flowed together in perfect sequences that followed rules only she could see. Shapes danced together in harmony, creating patterns that were both complex and soothing to look at. Each painting was different, but they all shared Emma's unique way of finding order and beauty in everything round her. On the night of the art exhibition, the school gymnasium was filled with parents, students, and teachers walking round to admire the artwork created by children from every grade level. When people approached Emma's display, they stopped and stared with expressions of wonder and amazement. "Look at the incredible detail in these paintings," one mother whispered to her husband. "The patterns are absolutely beautiful. How did such a young child create something so complex?" "What a talented young artist," said another parent, leaning in closer to examine the careful brushstrokes and precise geometric shapes. Emma stood beside her artwork wearing her best dress, feeling quiet but proud of what she had accomplished. She watched as person after person admired her paintings, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen and celebrated for exactly who she was. Mrs. Peterson stood up at the front of the room and spoke into a microphone to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to highlight some particularly outstanding work tonight. These beautiful mathematical art pieces were created by Emma Wilson, one of our most dedicated and talented students." Emma felt her cheeks grow warm as people turned to look at her and began clapping. She looked up at James, who was standing beside her with tears of pride shining in his eyes. His smile was so bright and full of love that Emma felt her heart might burst with happiness. "Daddy," she whispered, using that precious word for the very first time. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away." James knelt down and wrapped his daughter in a tight hug, not caring that other people were watching them. "Thank you for teaching me that love comes in many different forms," he whispered back. "The most beautiful families are built on acceptance, not on trying to make people perfect." As they walked home together through their quiet neighborhood, Emma's small hand tucked safely in James's larger one, he thought about Lucy and how proud she would be of their little family. Their dream of having children had finally come true, just not in the way they had originally imagined. Emma looked up at the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Daddy, do you think other children like me will find their forever families too?" Jane squeezed her hand gently and smiled down at her upturned face. "I believe every child who needs love will find it. Emma, sometimes it just takes time for the right hearts to find each other." The end.